roll call?
Rosa.
Yes.
DeMarsh is absent. Valentine.
Yes.
Jessup.
Yes.
Bringa.
Yes.
Wenzlaw.
Mm-hmm.
Timmons.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
And Frechette is present as well.
Okay. At this time, we'll open it up for limited public comment. We have new comment cards up at the front for your commenting pleasure. And Sean, do you want to read that, or do we?
I can read it. Members of the public may address the commission regarding any subject of community interest during public comment periods by filling out a public comment card and submitting it to the secretary. Comments during other portions of the agenda may or may not be entertained at the moderator's discretion.
Okay, great. Would anybody like to publicly comment? Yes?
I already put in my card, Andy Andrus, 1107 Barlow Street, Traverse City, but I'm representing the Andrus Trust at 4946 M72. I am here basically to understand more about the land unit development ordinance. And that's something I talked to Sean quite a bit about, so I don't know if there'd be a chance to have some conversation back and forth at the time or not, so.
Do you have any specific questions, or is it just a general?
I don't have any specific questions now because I don't know how you're going to redo the ordinance
Okay.
and those issues, so.
Okay.
It's something that was talked about quite a long time ago, and Sharon Corp used to be here. The Andruses have 40 acres that they're interested in this ordinance for.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. When we get to that point, we'll have board discussion and then allow comment kind of when that wraps up. If that helps you.
Yeah, I'm just looking if I have a question I want to ask or
Yeah.
something that I can have a little
Yeah.
feedback.
I might just squeeze you at towards the end.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear what you have to say
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you may answer all my questions.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Okay.
Anyone else for public comment? Yeah. Brian, we need a comment card filled out.
All right. Brian Kelly, Ridgecrest Road, Acme Township. As I looked over the packet, I saw the Goki apartment project. It looks like a great project. Obviously, we need more apartments like that in Acme. I have some concerns about the proximity to the creek and the 50-foot buffer between the buildings and the actual creek itself. And I also have some concerns about the determinations there in terms of wetland and the actual creek buffer. Making sure that that 50 feet is accurate. As I went through those materials, I found no stormwater detail sheets or the required stormwater runoff volume calculations. Those are part of the application process, and I feel that they should be a part of the packet. They should be available to the public here if we want to review those. We want to have a professional engineer look at them and give a once-over. I think that that's a very important component of any project, especially one within 50 feet of Acme Creek. I like how the basins are being located underneath the parking lot there. I think that's a nice use of the property and the density there. As I looked over the packet, I also found no survey on soil types. And, the stated claim that we've seen many times that nearby development suggests the soil types will not be problematic, that's not adequate. There's no way we can assume that anyone who knows geography in our community understands that clay exists as bands through the region. And you can have a small half-acre lot, and on one side of that lot you can have sand, and on the other side of that lot, just a few feet away, it can transition to clay. So to suggest that a nearby structure means that a given parcel has no soil types or problematic soil types, that is just, it sort of defies logic and what we actually have up here. A project like this should have an independent soil survey. There should be perk tests out there, and the results of those tests should be a part of the material submitted and in the packet, so you can make an informed decision about any mitigation that might need to be done. I'm curious about the vegetation near the creek, what's going to be preserved there. That vegetation is a critical buffer, the natural vegetation that exists there now. Obviously, if you mow up to the creek and then fertilize grasses there, that's a significant problem in regard to the creek. So I have some real concerns there. And from what I could see in the plans, it wasn't real clear to me. Finally, given the sensitivity of the site in that 50-foot proximity, I think a property like this really needs an environmental impact survey, and someone should sign off on that and do that survey. Maybe they go in there and it's a very brief survey and they say, look, this isn't going to be a problem, and it's an easy and inexpensive thing to do. Maybe there will be issues there, but I think that the community, the master plan, and the protections to the creek, that is an important component and should be part of the township. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll close public comment at 7:06. Yep, 7:06. The chair would now look for some kind of movement on the agenda for tonight's festivities.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda with the change of moving old business to I and new business to H.
We have a motion, do we have a support? Second? Okay. Is there any discussion about the change to the agenda? Any other changes anyone noted? Okay, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approval of the agenda with the switch of item H and I, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. With the agenda set, we'll now inquire as to any conflicts of interest with tonight's agenda items. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone would like to disclose? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. And the language isn't on there, so Sean, you're gonna have to read it.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together for one commission motion without discussion. A request to remove any item for discussion later in the agenda from any member of the planning commission, staff, or public shall be granted. Can I remove pen?
No, hold on, I'll read through the item. The consent calendar includes receiving and filing the approved minutes of the Township Board from 11/10/15, the Parks and Trail Committee minutes from 11/6/15. Also approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting from 11/9/15, and adopt the meeting schedules for the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals for 2016. Any items that anybody would like removed from the consent calendar?
Would like to remove the planning commission minutes from 11/9/15.
Okay. That is item A1. Any others? Okay, hearing none. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar with the removal of item A1.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the removal of item A1.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Valentine. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of approval of the consent calendar with removal of item A1, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. We'll move on to item E1 now, which is the PC minutes. Sean?
Yes, at the end of the public comment period at the beginning, the paragraph where the exchange with me and Mr. Mattson, the owner of the Acme Plaza, at the very end of that paragraph, I would just like to add that Winter recommended that tenants discontinue displaying merchandise until clarification and options can be provided. Mr. Mattson agreed.
Okay, could you say the page number again?
It's on the front page.
Okay, the first public comment.
Yep, after the public comment period closed, at the end of the paragraph.
Oh, okay.
After close.
Discussion occurred in the case for the Plaza SCP, a second variance was specifically not allowed. Attorney reviews, and what did you say you would add?
Where is
That, on the front page.
that?
It'd just be added after recommended?
Yep.
Okay, could you read it again?
Winter recommended that tenants discontinue displaying merchandise until clarification and options can be provided. And Mr. Mattson agreed.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No.
Does anybody else have anything from these minutes that they would like to address? Okay, we have
Make a motion.
We have Sean suggested change. I would entertain a motion from someone on the board to,
I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the change with the wording under public comment and Mr. Madison's comment, to add the wording, Winter recommended that tenants discontinue displaying merchandise until clarification options can be provided. Mr. Madison agreed.
are you voting to approve the minutes with that change or just the change itself?
Oh no, approving minutes with the change.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes with that correction from Sean. Would anybody like to support that?
Support.
Support from White. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approval of the minutes with the added language from Sean, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. Correspondence, planning and zoning news. Does anybody have anything insightful that they would like to comment on from a monthly circular? Okay. Are we like receiving and filing those or just going on? Going on? Okay. All right, we have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move right into new business. PUD SUP 2015-04 minor amendment with the site plan review for the Larkin Heath Golf Cottage. I apologize because your packet is going to be out of order now. When I find your materials, and then I believe that this review was done by Sean?
Yes.
Okay. Sean, you wanna take it away?
Yeah, the applicant, Mr. James Maitland, can't be here today due to illness, so
Okay.
representing him is Kevin O'Brien with Lockheed. Correct. Basically, they have a single-family residential building that was part of the original golf course PUD SUP. In the past, it has been used as, I believe, an administrative office as well as a sales office. It currently is sitting vacant, and they would like to turn it into a 6-room golf course cottage for guests and their members. It can sleep up to 14 people, but more likely it'll accommodate typically 6 guests, which would be 2 foursomes on the golf course. And that would typically occur on weekends, April through October. The building is already there. There wouldn't be much land disturbance in this project. There is a former attached garage that's already been converted into living space. The second story, they're gonna bump out over it to add another 120 square feet of living space inside. On the exterior, they're also gonna put 2 dormers, one on the north and one on the south side, kind of square up the interior rooms up there. There's already the parking provided. It's already part of the stormwater drainage system that they have there. The Lock-in Heath development has its own sanitary and water supply that they're dealing with, so no utility issues there. And in fact, that particular building already has a sewer benefit for future use already taken care of, so there's no issue in that case either. So, at that point, I think did you guys have any questions about it?
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Beth? Steve? Anybody?
Straightforward.
I had a few random questions. So right now, there are already 6 bathrooms in there?
No, there will be some interior work that's gonna be needed to make the 6 different bedrooms. Do you know how many bathrooms are in there? 2 now.
Okay.
So each bedroom will have its own private bathroom, so
Okay.
that'll have to be added.
And that was accounted for in the sewer benefits and the water consumption and all that. I just, and then my other question about it was, in looking at the duration of stay there, would we have any concerns with like that, with how this is allowed, with it turning into, I only say this because it's a very hot button issue in our county, with like Airbnb and, or even like long-term rental or like other than the use it's intended for, if we're not in any way limiting it with the application, are we okay with all those other rental type uses? Because we're seeing like a big, I can't hear anything. We're hearing like a big mix of rental stuff going on in our county because it's such a high demand for overnight rentals in the summer, and with the horse shows and everything, I mean, you can get some major buck. So,
I think part of that controversy is a lot of that's occurring in residential properties, and this is gonna be part of commercial development, the golf course itself. So I don't know if you're gonna have that same conflict, but I see what you're saying.
but if it's like, if no one who is a owner or member of Lock and Heath is gonna use it, is it just gonna go up on like Airbnb to be like a rental unit, and are we okay with that? I'm not
I see what
necessarily
you're
saying we
saying
shouldn't
there,
be
yeah.
okay with that, I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
To answer your question first, even if you had the horse shows by the day people renting it, we will probably average, if they were to rent the whole thing out, 800 to 1,400 a night.
yeah.
So to give up all 30 days. And it probably will, but that's in the off-season, and then, but they would have to pay an awful lot to have that for
Okay.
30 days. And the whole idea is we're doing this for our members to sell national members. And
Right.
the way you do that, you have lodging on site, and they spend ancillary dollars in golf and also food and beverage where persons staying there probably would not.
Right.
A long-term rental.
But you're almost asking like, is it exclusive to members and their guests? Like, I'm not a
Yeah,
member, and
that's
I'm
what
not a
I'm-
guest, like, could I stay there if I
Like,
wanted to?
do you have to
Plan
know
is
someone
not-
to get
plan
into
is
Yes,
it?
you do.
Okay.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
We
If
would
it's-
not rent it to someone unless they're gonna, as we're building our membership, we want people, we'll do membership preview packages. So they gotta play golf and
So
be
hey,
there on
come
property.
stay here, we'll show you the property. And then once the development is kind of chiming a little more with
Well,
memberships, then
it's more, it's memberships.
then it's
all
the
about
members
members.
can have, you know, their
Yes.
people from Austin, Texas fly in and
Right.
golf and stay and,
You got it.
okay. I just wondered if it, rentals get touchy in our community,
Sure.
and I just wanna think about it on the front side and make sure we kind of
No, it
know
makes sense.
what's going on. I think that was it.
Quick question. Kevin, where's the building located relative to the clubhouse?
Oh, about 400 yards from the clubhouse. The member pavilion, do you know where that's at?
Is that on
It's right,
this
it's right,
picture
yeah,
right
it's,
there?
that is the member pavilion that you see here. So when you come in the main entrance, that is the structure to the right, the cottage, to
Okay.
the right, and then that's the member pavilion there in that picture. And then you're gonna wind around another 500 yards. We've already got a cart path that you can see in between the two that can take them up to the clubhouse. We really would love their mode of transportation, be carts when they're on property, it's just, it adds a little ambiance and experience.
And then the other, just point of clarification, you had said 14 people can sleep there a couple of times, I believe it's 16. If you count the beds and look at this summary, it's 16 people are the maximum that could fit.
Yeah, I would
Which
say
it doesn't
it's-
matter.
It's
Yeah.
12, probably, max,
Well, if
No,
people
it's-
get
but
creative.
if a member brings
It's,
some kids or
it's
something. like
14.
If you count the
Says
beds
16
in the
on
drawing, there's 16, there's 8
Is-
double beds.
Okay. Sorry.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. But I mean, like, that one, you know, they'd have to be small people, because who really likes to sleep 2 on a double bed? But
Or a shared bedroom.
I've done it
No,
before
that's
at conferences, so it can be done. All right. That's it, that's all I have. What?
132.
There's only 2 recommendations that I made for a
Okay.
possible motion at the end. And I've talked with Mr. Maitland, the applicant, about the one is, when they remove the driveway, they'll need to add 2 trees and 10 shrubs to continue the screening of the right-of-way
Okay.
along 31. And the site plan needs some updates to it, so it was recommended that those updates occur, because the dumpster that's on there no longer exists. The north arrow's in the wrong direction, it doesn't have the seal or the final revision date, so just some
So we just
logistic
need to
stuff
get
before
those
we
and
sign
then
off.
sign on them. Where's the dumpster going? 'Cause I
Never,
didn't-
it hasn't been there for 2 years.
Okay, so is it at a different
It's
location
at
then?
over by our maintenance building.
Okay.
And that's where we take all of our trash in the clubhouse, and recyclable station is over there also.
Right, because these people wouldn't be taking their garbage out, the cleaning
No.
crew would, okay.
Housekeeping.
Okay. Oh, I didn't notice that the north arrow is in the wrong direction. Okay. Anybody else? Is anybody feeling moved?
I would make a motion to approve PUD SUP 2015-04 minor amendment with site plan review for Locking Golf Cottages, subject to completion, submission, and approval by the zoning administrator or the planner for the following. Updated site plan to include removal of dumpster, location and species of 2 trees and 10 small shrubs along US 31 right-of-way between the existing beech tree and where the driveway is to be removed. Correction of the compass arrow direction, stamped seals by engineer in date of final revision. The final approved set of the site plan drawings to be signed by the chairperson of Acme Township Planning Commission and the applicant or by their designated representatives.
We have a motion, would anybody like to support it?
Support.
From Rosa. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approval of the PUD SUP 2015-04 minor amendment with the items that Timmons just read, please say aye. All opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you for coming in. 2015-06 site plan review, Goki Apartments. John and I did this review. Do we have? Oh, okay, good. Do you guys want to start? Do you want John to start?
I can start while we're doing that.
Okay.
The application has been submitted by Todd Goki, and it's regarding 5 pieces of property overall at the end of Holt Road, which is right here behind Township Hall. The purpose of the submission is to build a 2-phase, 24-unit townhouse-style apartments on the property. The property is currently zoned for mixed-use, mixed housing neighborhood under the form-based code, and the use is compliant with section 6.641, which is regulated uses permitted by right, so it only requires a site plan review. This is not a special approval. The application, to some degree, had been fast-tracked through the review process, primarily because of the way the holidays fell with Thanksgiving and Christmas. So you'll find on the table this evening a couple of the letters from some of the review agencies that were not included in the packet that was mailed out to you at the latter part of the week. The property is situated that the north part of the property is adjacent to Acme Creek. Part of the zoning requirements require a 50-foot buffer. According to the site plans, there's going to be very little vegetation disturbance within that 50-foot of the buffer area. The development complies with all of the aspects of the code in terms of density, and the number of units. We put in sidewalks, parking, landscaping. They meet pretty much all of the requirements. The outstanding issues that we were waiting for was a review, as I had mentioned, we kind of fast-tracked this between the 2 holidays, is a review by the township engineer, Goslin Zubek, who they did submit their findings, their review. The interesting part of the project is that the stormwater from the project is not directed towards the creek. The stormwater is directed internally through foundation drains and then into an underground stormwater system that's built under the parking lots. According to the technical memo from the engineers, they concur with the calculations in terms of the amount of stormwater runoff, the sizing of the system. The only thing that they're requiring in terms of design criteria, which has not been done yet and was noted in the site plan review, was an infiltration test to make sure that the amount of stormwater that's put into the underground system will be able to infiltrate quick enough to meet the stormwater calculations. As noted in the review that came today from the Soil and Sedimentation Control Department of the county, the site is, based on the county soil survey, consists mostly of Mansalona East Lake loamy sands, and the Kalkaska sands parallel the creek, and then according to the Soil Conservation Office, both of these types of soil allow for excellent drainage and low erosion potential. But the engineers, and as I said, noted in our site plan review, we want an infiltration test just to make sure that the amount of water that goes into the underground system will percolate fast enough. The Grand Traverse Metro Fire, we had some preliminary indications from them that they were, even though this does not have public water, that they will require a 24-hour, 7/24 basically monitoring system within the apartment buildings in case of a fire, okay, in lieu of a sprinkler system. They've provided a letter here dated 12/24/14. We'll make that part of the record, and the engineer and the applicant would have to comply with the recommendations that they've included. Some of the outstanding issues that we've talked about with the engineer of record for the project primarily include revisions to the final site plan. The site plan that was submitted, the landscaping plan, needs to be revised. It needs to include the native plant, compliance with native plant ordinance. They're aware of that. They just didn't have time to get it done. We're putting it down as a condition prior to the authorization of the land use permit by Sean. So once they supply that, is one of the conditions we can move ahead. We've put together a draft suggested motion for the PC to take a look at as part of the approval. Again, not a lot of surprises with the site plan. Did a pretty good job overall. The applicant did a good job of complying with the requirements in the new ordinance for this type of development. I think it'll be a nice addition to the township. Any questions?
Can we address the public comments quickly from the public comment session on the stormwater sheets and volume calculations?
I'll do that.
Yeah, and then the soil survey, and the buffer are the notes that I have, so I'll let you, I just wanted to make sure they get addressed.
Scott Joswiak, project engineer. Last week we worked through Gosling Zubak to come up with a final storm design, and that's kind of why I didn't make it in the packet, because we were still kind of going back and forth on some iterations and stuff. We have got a complete stormwater analysis that's through an actual stormwater modeling program as opposed to just a straight calculation, so the packet's a little thick. We did test it for back-to-back 100-year storms, and we do not release water back-to-back 100. So I have been out there and have performed some hand augers and confirmed some of the soils for myself. We are hiring Owl Lobby to go out there and actually do the percolation test once we get kind of a blessing tonight. So with the weather holding, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So as far as stormwater and soils, we're a completely different animal than previous projects upstream. And so with a high infiltration rate on the soils and stuff, our releases even during construction are very minimal. We did do double rows of silt fence, and we also added some hay bales, I think with some comments we had come back. We did kind of put it into context that we've got 2.5 acres of disturbance between both phases. We've got 1,200 feet of silt fence shown, so it's a pretty high ratio of silt fence for whatever it is. But I think under the situations and stuff, it was pretty simple to integrate to pacify some bad things that have happened upstream. So I don't know if you want me to just go through the site plan quick, or if everybody's comfortable with it. I'll trip on it first here.
You can go through it.
All right.
Maybe talk about the phasing too.
You bet, yeah.
That's always hard to get when you're reading these packets.
I know.
No, it's not you, it's just,
Yeah,
like.
there's actually, there five parcels there? Yeah, okay. This one stands alone. This is phase 2. There's an existing house on it right now. This one is a vacant piece. There's actually a couple pieces that make that up. This is our phase 1. Todd has an option on phase 2, and so our phase line is going to be right on the property line as it exists today. So if this project doesn't morph into a second phase due to economics or whatever, then this can stand alone and legally stand alone. We will have a fire access throughout phase 1 where we would pass through to Gilbert to get fire department access, but if you can just imagine that cutoff right there, the whole project will stand alone on its own on phase 1. So then once economics dictate, phase 2 would be engaged, and then we'd make this connection over to Gilbert Avenue. The public right-of-way of Gilbert Avenue is way down here. This becomes an easement, this last leg that goes behind ASCOM and stuff. So we would just be, I really, I got the road commission review letter, and I talked to Garth at the road commission, but I don't think we're actually needing a permit over here for that, but because we're not working in the right-of-way. Over here we have Holt Road, which we will be, bringing into the site for the most part. Garth from the road commission did indicate working with them a little bit to get a turnaround established in there, because there's really no turnaround at that street now. So we're going to see what we can do. But essentially, it's 2-story townhome style. All homes will be entered off of at grade level, and then have a second story above them. In the back here, there's these little bump outs. Those are going to be a mechanical room will be part of that, and then there'll be outside storage. And John, I forgot all about it. I added the bike rack in there, but each one of these units can have, they can have their own bikes right in their apartment. So not inside the apartment, in the storage unit out in the back. So so we kind of made a lot of provisions for just people living in these environments. The dumpster pad, I know John, you and I went back and forth a couple of times on location and stuff, and we talked with the owner, and just really felt like we wanted to get it out of here and out of the way, because if it was up in this area, we really felt that this could be maybe a little bit of a spot where, if people want to have a picnic or something, and a picnic table or something, we wouldn't have a dumpster pad sitting there. So unfortunately, it is kind of, as we're driving in, we've got a dumpster here, but we did our best to kind of tuck it away and screen it. I talked to American Waste about, we were going to do a kind where you can pull it out and roll it, and then the guy would jump back in his truck and lift it and dump it. And the guy from American Waste, Pat Klein, said, please don't do that. We had a guy tear his ACL or something last year trying to drag the dumpster out of a dumpster pad before he lifted it. So I don't know, whatever. We'll sidebar now. So overall, it's a very simple project in a lot of respects, because we have sewer right here, we have sewer over here, so sewer will access to that building off a hole. When this one goes in, there'll be a lead extension off of Gilbert Avenue, which that lead is already shown on an as-built, so we're pretty clean on that. Water, we're going to use wells. At some point in the future, if we'd really like to hook up to water, so if those discussions could continue, that'd be great. We'd love to be part of that. We'll make it as easy as possible for us to hook into that once that Ken will come by. So, sorry, am I missing anything? Oh, screening. The buffer line. Yeah, the 50-foot setback. And if you, we had this. We spent a lot actually trying to get this surveyed really tight. So we did get the edge of the creek very, very discreet, correctly marked down there. So this 50-foot setback is a definitive setback from those edges at all locations. So we feel we're able to stay and not touch all that stuff. However, we do have, if you look at the demolition sheet in phase 2, part of the house, and there's some stuff that's down below the 50-foot mark of the existing house that will have to get torn out. So there will be some disturbance down there, but I put our silk fence down around behind all that. There is a plateau. The guy's, he's got like a walkout basement or something there. So it's okay, we're not gonna, I don't have any concerns, I guess, when we go through construction for doing that. But we will have to get down below the 50 to pull that stuff out. So our intent is to leave everything, only take out the vegetation we absolutely need to, but I don't think it's gonna be very much at all. And we don't really have any plans to put anything new down in there. That could be discussed.
Okay, Questions, anybody?
I just want to clarify, we're only looking at phase one tonight, right? As
No.
approval.
This is seeking
We want
approval for
both.
both.
We want both phases, and we'll come back for land use for phase one.
Phase two.
Phase two.
Well, you have to
No,
go land
we'll
use
do
first.
land use for
Land
phase
use.
one, and then
Okay.
we'll come back for land use for phase two.
Yeah.
Are they all gonna be 2 bedrooms?
2 bedrooms, bath.
And it looks like the disturbance, when you go into phase two, it looks like that house is already closer than the 50-foot.
Yes. And there's a retaining wall that kind of juts, a concrete retaining wall that juts down in there. Then there's just a few things.
Are you having to put a retaining wall back in place?
No, because it's part of his walkout basement,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you're saying basically the vegetation that's there now is gonna remain?
Yeah, except,
And you don't really plan on taking anything out or adding anything to
Right.
it at this
The
point?
only thing in the 15-foot setback that will come out will be the guy's patios, cement patios behind his house at a walkout basement. When we remove that house, that patio would be taken away, and then
And then vegetation would
Yeah.
return.
put back in. That isn't there now, right now it's concrete, but we put it back to vegetation.
Yeah, vegetation would be better anyway.
So,
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, if water is available for phase two,
Mhm.
would that be monitored 24/7, or would you use sprinklers?
We wouldn't, all we need to do is have a fire hydrant or a
Oh,
water
okay.
supply,
That's just, yeah,
so, and then that monitoring can go away,
okay.
unless the code changes at that point.
Oh, yeah.
The way he's building them, we don't need to suppress them, or put fire suppression in here. The fire department just wanted to have a water supply, so, in lieu of that, they offered, the ability to do monitoring, and Brian Belcher said, I'd rather know a fire's about to happen than to get there and have it already happening, so he said he would more prefer to have early detection anyway, so.
Anybody else questions? Steve?
No.
Anybody?
I got a question.
Yeah.
It looks like in some areas of this area along the creek, there's some really steep slopes. And I'm wondering if those are like, I see some of these slopes like over across here, like you go over to Christ the King, where the bridge is there, or yeah, and the culverts or whatever there, and it's like those slopes are basically just sand. Am I right about that? Are those slopes sandy or that? Is there gonna be an issue with that in conjunction with this development, if you have people out, because you don't have many people out there right now, but if you have, you know,
Are you
children
talking
or,
people matting it down?
yeah, well, people out there, if it drops basically down to the creek, you know, like that, you're gonna have with a lot of erosion, sand and that going into the creek.
It is, in that 50-foot setback, it is almost flat. But when you get to the creek, it is a straight drop. So
Yeah, that's,
it's almost impossible for anybody to ever make it down that bank and get back up.
Yeah, we tried.
But the rest of it is a one-way shot.
Did you lose your surveyor?
We walked down and we had waiters.
Yeah, there are areas along there that it's probably 15 feet straight down to
okay.
the river.
Well, I'm just
But
concerned
the
that,
50 feet up to that point is flat, so I don't know how they'd ever get down.
so a wise
there.
person isn't gonna try to go down that.
You could, you couldn't.
It's not gonna be a trampling effect, it might be a one-off situation, more so than routine, where we get that for trampling.
John?
And I think, go along with Dan's comment, that's the reason why we recommended a second silt fence and then also the straw bales. And they're up on the contour before it goes down to kind of create that edge to prevent that.
It looks like there's little goat trails out there, like people, are they walking from the resort condos
I
out
don't
there?
know, they're.
Like if you look on the aerial, it looks like there's a
mowed
little,
trails, yeah.
network of trails.
Yeah.
And I just wondered,
We're hoping
out
there's
of sheer curiosity, what those were from. 'cause
We're
it
hoping there's
doesn't-
treasure down there.
Okay, I have a few questions. So the apartment complex then, it would be left as vegetation in that buffer. It's not like a chance where someone's gonna be like, hey, let's mow this all down and put a picnic area right by the water or something like that. Okay.
Currently, anything's open at 50 feet.
Okay, I just wanted for the record, make
Each
sure.
unit has a cement patio outside their dining room door, next to that one storage building.
Mhm.
That would be, and all of that is up above the 50-foot setback.
Okay.
Tenants aren't mowing anything themselves anyway. It's all-
Yeah, but yeah, it's more of a
Come
question
by.
for, or I don't know if you are gonna own it when you're done or if you
Yeah.
sell it, but, I just would like to not see like, go out there in 5 years and you've mowed it down and you're selling them as waterfront
Waterfront condos.
on the creek, I don't know. My other question is, could the dumpster move with phase 2 if you're having all these concerns about the dumpster being right when you pull in, cause it is like
It's right there.
right in front of
But,
It is screened and there are doors in front of it.
Okay.
Yeah, exposed anyway.
yeah,
For phase 2, there could be a second one at the other entrance on the other end.
Okay.
we'll see how this one works, but.
We have it.
Is that entrance on the other end gonna be gated though? I thought it read that,
Yeah.
Yes.
is that just for now, or is that,
That would be, yeah, we just don't want to cut through traffic through there, so it'd be a fire crash gate,
okay, so when phase 2 is done, they'd still be coming in off of Holt Road?
yeah.
That's the main entrance?
We
Okay.
don't want it to be a shortcut to drive through the
Yeah.
complex to get to one road or to the other.
I'm
It's
sure
not-
if you worked at ASCOM, that would
It's
be
not
the
very
thing you would
road-like
do.
back there either,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, and then, parking, I was surprised, usually I'm surprised by how much parking we require in this township, but I was surprised by how little parking there is, given they're 2-bedroom apartments. In my mind, I think, well, everybody needs 2 parking spaces then, cause it's a 2-bedroom. Is it adequate parking? It's just,
It's the new code.
okay. It just seems really light, like the people who live there are gonna be playing musical cars,
Yeah.
or like parking at the resort, Steve, get ready for it. You know, because they don't have enough parking spots and there's always parking
Yeah.
spots over there. I just was asking, because it seems like not a lot of parking for 2-bedroom units.
Always want more.
We tried to keep it at the minimum so we didn't disturb more. There's more land out there on this side of it, that it could be expanded, but then we're taking away trees
Okay,
and green space.
no, I
and
mean, I'm
buffer on that
fine with
side.
it, it just seems so light.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think that's the end of my questions. Anybody else?
So, you're gonna have an infiltration test or, done, or that was already done?
We're doing that, we'll be doing that.
Okay.
Just to point out to the PC that under your old zoning ordinance, this type of development would not be allowed to happen. Because you only allowed under the old code, it was only 4 dwelling units per acre. This is about, I think it's around 12 units per acre. Just, it hits the mixed housing code now, but this development would not have been allowed to happen under the old zoning ordinance. Just to give you a perspective on how the regulations have changed to accommodate this type of a use.
I'm curious, what kind of rent are you expecting? Just,
We're not sure at this point. They'll be in the $1,000, $1,100 a month range.
So Todd, these are apartments? They're
Yeah.
they're not condos?
Not condos. We're not
Okay,
selling.
I see
First
them
thing
are
rental.
townhome apartment, so it is.
Yeah, they're called townhouses because one unit has 2 floors.
Okay.
And that's one of the exceptions in the fire code that allows you to build without a sprinkler system is that there's nobody else living above you. So you're in control of fire, I guess, in your own unit. There's not another family above you that don't know there's a fire in your own unit. And there's a firewall in between every single unit, but they're called townhomes because they're 2 floors for the same tenant, 2 floors for the same tenant.
Any other questions? I came up with one more, actually 2 more, sorry. We don't concern ourselves at all with elevations, because it doesn't seem like there's any elevations of the townhomes in the packet.
There was
Where am I missing it?
Front elevations and.
I don't think I got them.
Oh, it's a separate sheet. Wait, when you say elevations like the
Like,
front.
what's it gonna look like from the
Yeah, it's in
road?
there.
You just have
It looks like this.
Oh,
With
I
the
forgot
layout.
about that sheet. Okay,
Plus, they're about 1,100 square feet per unit. between 1,000 and 1,100 per unit.
Okay,
Some will vary a little bit because some are on corners and they're angled. But in general, they're about 1,100 per.
the other okay, so with the stormwater, I remember the last one that we had come in under form-based code.
This one's innovative.
Okay, that's exactly what I was gonna ask, is this considered innovative enough?
Yes.
Because it's the underground
Underground.
infiltration system,
Yep.
which I think is kinda cool, I've never seen that on an application before, so I just wanted to check. It doesn't just store down there, it goes
No.
down there and then it
Yeah.
then it infiltrates.
Yes, infiltrates, yeah.
It gets rid of the ugliness of a retention pond, but you see on every other development, around most.
And I don't know where you would stick one on there where it's not gonna be,
There is land
Oh, there
for
was,
it, but
yeah, we could have blasted one in there.
oh,
I'd have been the easy one.
then they're, yeah, they're an eyesore and they have a chain link fence around them so people don't fall in when they have full of water.
Mhm.
Yeah, this way everything's underground,
cool,
under the parking lot.
Brian,
Thanks, Carly. Couple of quickies. Appreciate Mr. Goki not putting grass back there. That's really nice. And I wonder if the township, maybe in 5 or 15 years, is there anything we can do if this property changes hands to sort of preserve that somebody won't do the big mow down the road, you know? That's my first question. My second question is, given these steep slopes and the proximity there, you know, it's kind of a silly thing, but I think it's a reasonable concern. Where are people gonna run their dogs there? And should we be thinking about encouraging them to do it in that front area and maybe putting some signage in the back, you know? Because it really, it depends on how many people have dogs. And, but by the creek, it's an E. coli thing, I think,
okay,
possibly.
First of all, we don't, that's one thing I've done with apartments, I've done in the past, I don't allow pets.
Oh, I see,
Of any
okay.
kind.
Well,
Most
that's really good. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, yeah, it just leads to other
Sure.
problems.
wonderful.
barking, pooping on carpet,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Changing carpet between tenants. No pets.
No pet deposit helps with that. Okay,
So deed restrictions or anything down the road, 20 years, somebody wants to mow that off?
I have it in the record, I asked about the mowing, it's not gonna get mowed off,
Is
so
that
we'll,
binding on a future
we'll
owner?
make sure it's in the record. I mean, like, what, you want me to add a stipulation to the approval? Is
I'm just
that,
wondering what Mr. Jocks can maybe tell us what's customary here, if the township is, I think, reasonably concerned that in 20 years, maybe, you know, how can we protect against that?
The site plan, the ordinance requires a 50-foot buffer.
okay. And the definition of a buffer is, we'll get the definition of the buffer, and I think that that will satisfy the concerns over that.
Thank you.
All right. So if we go through the suggested motion here, I'm assuming that the applicant is in agreement with the review from fire and the stormwater review and its recommendations. There's nothing that was sitting on our table tonight that you don't agree with. Okay.
Carly?
Huh.
The definition is that the natural vegetation shall be maintained within these setback buffers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Carly, could I get a copy of the, I never did see the one from Gosling, if I could just scan that quick.
Here, you can have mine. I think. I'm lying. Where'd it go?
We talked a lot last week, but I can put that one.
Email it to you.
Here you go.
This one, before you guys approve it.
Oh, yeah, okay. If for some reason the infiltration doesn't work out with that infiltration test, what happens? They come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Scott, do you have soil and,
Yeah.
you got those? Okay.
Yeah, just don't want to.
Doesn't.
They'll have to come back.
Okay.
Would we come back to this board, or would that just be a stipulation that corrects before the actual, you're not issuing a permit anyway, would that be before the permit is issued?
I'm just checking here. Okay, so we have the sheets that I would sign and the package. Okay. The southern edge of the parking lot will not include a curb and shall be used for snow storage.
Scott, you wanna point that out?
Is
Oh,
that
yeah,
down by
that's
the,
Where that retention
We-
pond could have been.
oh, okay.
All of this area is gonna have a reveal on the sidewalk, and then we have a little curb wrap right around here, and then sidewalk again. This whole area, John and I were talking that, we just didn't wanna put any curb there, just because this is gonna be where we're gonna put snow.
Okay. All recommendations from the township engineer regarding stormwater management shall be instituted and comply with section blah, blah, blah. You have that now, you're good. Okay, parking lot light poles shall not exceed the height of the roof and shall be in conformance with section 6663. We're good with that one too?
You got it? If they have any parking lot, I didn't see them on the plan, I just wanted to make sure if they.
Parking lot.
There's none gonna be
Oh,
on
not
site.
gonna happen, okay.
Okay.
There's no pole lights.
Whole light,
Okay.
push lights, push lights.
Are there any lights?
There are not, yeah, on the building by the doors,
Just
Okay.
a
but
coach
no
light.
parking lot.
And they're
overhead
down
lights.
facing,
Yeah.
dark sky compliant things. Because the development is residential only and not mixed use, the height of the first floor does not need to comply. You're good with that? Final landscape plan, that is gonna be native landscaping with our new native ordinance. Even though I do love star magnolias, I don't know, are they on the native? Yeah, they're so pretty though. All agency permits must be provided to the township prior to issuance, and that, it looks like we have most, if not all of them now.
The soil's being worked on, we got their preliminary letter.
Okay.
We'll get final permits once we come in for land use, because
Yeah,
we'll generate a phase 1 construction set.
just for that, yeah.
Carla,
So,
I would just add, another one,
okay,
just to make sure that we wrap
9,
them all
we're good
up.
up there, guys.
Well, 9 would be, all comments from review agencies are required to be addressed and included in the final plans. Okay. All comments from review agencies are required to be addressed and included in the final plans. And that should wrap it up.
One more logistical question. Say you build these units out and it occupies immediately and you go to build phase 2, but they have changed fire code or something. Does that just get handled administratively? Or water gets there, which, who knows?
Well,
Um,
yeah, I would think that, my opinion would be it would be handled administratively.
Okay,
Especially.
because
if
it
we
wouldn't
get
really
public water.
change
It wouldn't change- it's not
substantially
gonna
what
change
is going
anything.
in, it'd be just, okay. I just wanted to ask that because there's a very real chance by the time you get to phase 2, things could be different.
I'm offering.
10 years, is that
I'm
what you
off-
said?
No, I was gonna make an item tonight.
Oh,
I'm offering these opinions fairly liberally because he's got his arm in a sling and he can't.
he
hit
can't
me.
hit you in the back of the head today?
I'm taking advantage of it.
I think he's correct in that that would be an administrative
Just a
amendment.
lawyer, he's used to that.
Because we'll need fire review when we come in with final building plans anyway, with either phase 1 or phase 2. And
Okay, so we have a suggested motion with an item number 9 that was added as a suggestion. I don't know if anybody is feeling moved. Anybody want to play popcorn and read the motion? Anybody want to do anything? I swear to God, you guys.
I would make a motion to approve the site plan submitted by Todd Gopi for the construction of 24 townhome apartments to be built in 2 phases located on 2.17 acres with the following stipulations. The approved site plan consists of sheet 1 through 5 with a date to be written in the lower right-hand corner and the title sheet IEC 1.1 by the chairperson of the planning commission. A is sheet C0, general information plan. B, sheet C1.1, demolition plan. C, sheet C1.2, site plan and dimension plan. Sheet C1.3, utility plan. Sheet C1.4, grading, drainage, soil erosion plan. 2, the approved site plan package to be signed by the chairperson of the planning commission and the applicant or their representative. 3, the southern edge of the parking lot shall not include a curb and shall be used for snow storage. 4, all recommendations from the township engineer regarding stormwater management shall be instituted to comply with section 6.6.6.5. Parking lot light poles shall not exceed the height of the roof and shall be in conformance conformance with section 6.6.6.3. Because the development is residential only and not a mixed-use project, the height of the first floor does not need to comply with section 6.6.5.2, first floor ceiling height. Number 7 is a final landscape plan that complies with section 7.5.6. Landscaping shall be submitted and approved by Bucket Raider prior to the issuance of a land use permit. All agency permits must be provided to the township prior to the issuance of the land use permit. And number 9, all comments from review agencies are required to be addressed and included in final plans.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion, we have support, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion that Timmons just read, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
John, for your help. Yeah, thank you.
You're gonna pack up, please try to be quiet. What? Yeah, I was not gonna reread that one, I think people got it. Last item on new business is the planning commission agenda format. Sean or I can talk about this.
I'll just start real quick, but in your packet is just a draft sample. We've been talking, Carly and I, about how we can change the order of the agenda items. The Township Board recently did this, and the board kind of approved the change together, so that's why I put on the agenda today, so you all could chime in on it. The idea is to try to move some of the people who are going to be presenting, such as what we just have now, towards the front of the the meeting. Maybe some of our general housekeeping stuff towards the end that pertains more to us, and that way people aren't stuck waiting to the very end just to present on their project. So what you see for the draft sample is tonight's agenda, just rearranged in different order. Again, it's just a starting point, and I'll let you guys try to figure out what you think is best. Perhaps Jeff, are we free to kind of move it a little bit? No issues with that?
Yeah, the only thing that strikes me is you might want to find the policy and procedures.
Bylaws.
Well, there was a policies and procedures for the township that the board adopted 6 months ago, a year ago. And it had some agenda requirements, so you may want to just look and make sure that there's not something that's inconsistent. There's nothing that strikes me off the top of my head, but it did. I'm pretty sure it applied to the planning commission too.
I would suggest that we would get rid of items removed from the consent calendar, because we're getting rid of the consent calendar as a thing. I find that most oftentimes it takes longer for us to read the paragraph about the consent calendar than it does for us to handle the business on it. Then we always end up taking something off anyway, so we end up approving a consent calendar of one item. So for me, it makes more sense to just have the items that we receive and file and make a motion for those, and the items that we are approving or adopting. So it can just be a motion. So you guys will have to make motions more. But I think it would go much faster. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh.
I was just trying to get your attention.
It seemed like an urgent hand.
No, I just wanted to say that for each of the receive and file and action items, you need a motion for each one.
Okay.
You wouldn't be able to approve action because that would be akin to the consent calendar.
Okay.
Like
A lot of
grouping
times we have like
non-controversial items
2,
as one.
maybe 3 items on
Yeah.
there, so I don't think it should be a major deal to do that.
I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen.
But, I mean, it makes sense for the board, because the board will receive and file 5 reports, whereas we are not doing that. So, I don't know, anyone, if you have thoughts on that. I would like the language up with the limited public comment that you read, with the addition of the 3-minute thing. That's a good idea.
It is on the comment card too, but I'll add it.
I just,
Yeah.
the more times it's reiterated, the more I can enforce it. Yeah. Does anybody actually even care about this? Probably. Okay, all right, so nobody seems opposed to any of it, so Sean, we have free reign, we'll find this policy and procedure.
It's gonna require more.
It could,
Information.
but we always seem to remove the minutes from our meetings, so why not just discuss them and make a motion instead of read a paragraph, remove them, talk about it, then make a motion?
Okay, people, I need some motion help here.
Yeah, Timmons can't do all the motions, okay? So, all right. Since that was a big flap, let's move on to old business.
You do it so well, though.
Well, and Trey, poor Trey has to write them all down. So this side of the table could, yeah.
A suggestion would be to look at what Traverse City does also. They
Okay.
do the 3 minutes. but-
Wait, the city?
Yes, the city.
Okay,
Um,
because you have a lot of government bodies over there.
the city commission.
Okay.
The other boards can follow, but usually they don't. Is that if you have a big project come forward that they select someone from their group, so that it doesn't, every 3 minutes, it doesn't get repeated the same.
Mhm.
Someone will come up and summarize what that issue is, and they may be granted more time, because what they're doing is they're summarizing what could be an hour-long or 2-hour-long public comment, so.
Yeah, we rarely, I've been here 5 years, and we've had that once.
Okay. I'm going back to the days where John and I used to sit here until after midnight.
Oh, yeah. We don't do that very often anymore. The last time we did that was when we held our meetings at the Williamsburg Dinner Theater with the Meyer approval. But since then, I don't think we've ever had a public comment session that's lasted more than,
Just a suggestion. 'cause
Yeah, no,
I've
I
seen
appreciate it.
before.
And it might be useful to keep in mind if we do have something else that's like hot button. So, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to old business. Amendment 36, medical marijuana dispensaries and cultivation operations. Since we remembered to tell Mr. Jocks to be here tonight, he's gonna tell us, you're gonna explain the difference between what we were doing and why the county disagrees with us and where we stand, because if we have to go to court, you're the one who's there, so it doesn't matter what the county thinks, it matters what you think.
I'm going to do my best based on what I see in the reviews in the packet. If you have other questions or issues that I missed that were discussed at the meeting previous or the meeting previous to that, please throw them out there. I think, as I understand the issues from the county, that there were basically two. The first related to what Planning and Zoning News said in the August issue, which was dispensaries are now determined to be illegal by the Supreme Court, and that is not really the case. Dispensaries run in a certain manner are, let me rephrase that. Certain transactions, patient-to-patient transactions, under the Act are not allowed. And therefore, the dispensaries that were operating like that were deemed to be illegal by the Supreme Court in that case, because those transactions weren't allowed. That's not to say that there are other ways to operate, potentially, within the Act, including, but not limited to, perhaps, a single, I'm going to point to myself, but I'm not actually a caregiver, a single caregiver with 5 patients who chooses to open up a shop and hang a sign and put some neon out there, who only services 5 patients. That would be a completely allowable dispensary, presumably would not make money, but that would be legal and okay. So there are folks operating out there in ways that are not clear to me, because they don't ever tell how they are operating, but presumably they're operating within the law because they have to. And so to the extent that they are, there's nothing that prohibits a dispensary. That there's a misunderstanding of what that case said. So it's my opinion that they're not prohibited. They're prohibited when they operate in a certain way, but if you can figure out how to operate legally, you can have a storefront so long as the municipality allows it under its zoning ordinance. Does that answer that question?
And so the county disagrees?
The county disagrees with my interpretation.
The county basically says
Attorneys
you
always
can't have
disagree.
them at all, right? You can't have a dispensary, it's not a
Yeah.
thing, they're all illegal.
Yeah.
What Jeff is saying is that if you are following the law, you're probably not making money, but you could have a legal dispensary operating in the county, but you would literally only have 5 customers if you were one caregiver. And I think the way our ordinance is written, it's not written so that you could have like 20 caregivers who all operate.
Six, I think.
Well, the
That's
6 could be the
including
person,
yourself.
it's
Well-
5 plus yourself.
Right.
If you're, yeah.
Including yourself.
Yeah,
So
As I
basically,
remember reading it.
right, as the law is right now, you could basically open a storefront that has 5 other
Right.
patients, and that's it.
Well, there are, I mean, I'm not gonna get into my theoretical ideas of how you could operate
I don't think we
legally,
should
'cause
put
I have
those in
some
the minutes.
ideas. I have some ideas, but, you know, unless you pay me for those, I'm not gonna disclose them. But the point is that you can, as far as I'm concerned, dispensaries in and of themselves are not illegal like they say. That is a misunderstanding of the
They're
law.
illegal in how
They're
people
legal.
are operating them.
Yes, the way they were operated in that case is not allowed.
Which right now, where is this, there was a court case in Garfield Township, correct? Has
And that ended on a non-substantive decision. So the judge did not have to decide whether that dispensary was legal or not. They lost because they couldn't prove their case.
The township lost?
No.
The owners.
Owners lost because, so the owner in the deposition pled the fifth, that is, refused to answer questions. And therefore, when it came to establish under the Exclusionary Zoning Act that they were a lawful operated business, they could not do it because they refused to answer questions as to how they were a lawful operated business. So they lost, not because they were or weren't, but because they didn't
They
answer
wouldn't
questions
prove
to
it.
prove that they were.
They didn't give away their trade secrets.
They didn't give away their secrets.
Or lack of trade
Or
secrets.
lack of them.
Whichever one it is.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
it was not decided on an issue that would affect this township.
So is it still your recommendation that this is something that we move forward with as far as zoning?
Sure, I think it's fine, yeah. Go ahead.
I just have a question. I was reading about their cultivation, and they're saying that they don't think that a special use permit is something that would be granted for cultivation?
I don't understand what that means.
I don't either, so I was hoping you could clarify.
One possible inconsistency includes permitting, oh no, well,
Requiring the SCP.
which sentence is that? Oh, another possible inconsistency is whether a special use permit can be required for cultivation operations. I'm not really sure what that means.
Like, we couldn't make it a special use?
Is that
Yeah, I don't know
the
why you-
question of ag,
Yeah.
like the right to farm or anything
Oh.
like that? Is that what they're suggesting? Like, can we even zone for that because it's protected as the, but it would be inside.
I don't know, I don't think, no, it wouldn't be, that would be,
Chickens are inside?
yeah, but there's no
Like-
there's no GAMP for marijuana. There's no, it's not really protected under the right to farm.
That's so discriminatory. It is farming.
Well, it may be over in time. The other issue, though, that they raise is, one possible inconsistency includes, and they say, permitting owner of the property access to the cultivation operation, which is, again, a misunderstanding of what the draft ordinance that Sean put together says. The draft ordinance that Sean put together says that no one but the owner would be allowed in a cultivation facility. It doesn't say the owner must be or shall be allowed in the cultivation facility. It just says, from your perspective, your zoning says no one else can go in there except the person who's cultivating and the owner of the property. If
Who
the owner
does
of the-
not have to be the same person.
Correct. If the owner of the property, if I'm leasing it to the cultivator and the law says I can't go in, according to their interpretation, well, okay, then I can't go in. But we don't have to say they're excluded, and we're not saying they must be allowed. We're saying that no one can go in except for those two people. The reason being the owner, if the law allows it, which I think arguably it would, at least for inspection through a cage locked facility at a minimum. Because if you're the owner of property, you're going to want to have some level of ability to make sure that someone's not dumping their grow chemicals on the floor or doing something that would harm your property. But the point of that is that they misunderstood what that says. That does not say that the owner must be allowed or shall be allowed. It says the only people that will be allowed under your ordinance are the owner and the cultivator. And if for some reason the owner's not allowed into that locked facility, then so be it. You're not saying they have to be allowed. You're just prohibiting who can go there, not requiring who, not mandating who must be allowed by that section. You follow?
Yeah, so if we adopt this, or well, recommend approval of the board,
Sure.
because right now we've held the public hearing on this, correct? So that's what we would be doing with it. If we weren't, trying to think of the right word, if we weren't in line necessarily with what the county is recommending, because normally we're very in line with them.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, the first time they've ever come back and said, we don't agree with what you guys wrote up, basically, in some capacity. What does that mean? Like, how does that, does it matter?
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. First, I mean, they gave comments, but they didn't give a recommendation as to whether they, I don't think.
Well, I'm
The
really
staff,
confused, because it
the
says,
planning commission didn't, the staff did say,
It
the
says-
staff recognized the gray area nature of
Yeah.
this and says, they recommend that the county planning, they recommended to
That
their
they-
planning commission that they
they
concur with the
concur
township.
with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the
Yeah.
planning commission themselves didn't make a recommendation one way or the other.
Okay, that's what I didn't get that last sentence in the county planning staff comments. It's kind of unclear as to what they're saying to us.
The county planning commission has no authority. It can ignore your
Okay.
presentation of the ordinance to them. It can say, no, you're crazy, you should deny it. It can say, we love it. You do not have to follow in any way, shape, or form their comments or recommendations. They're valuable, for sure,
Okay.
and you should consider them. To the extent I think they're right.
So basically, the county has the right to review and give input, but we
Yeah.
don't have to follow their input. They just
Correct.
have,
Okay.
because they've waived it before, I think for the electronic signs. We would have been the only thing on their agenda, so they're like, we're just gonna waive our review.
Yeah, if they don't, I think it's 30 days. If they don't respond
Yeah.
within 30 days,
Yeah.
then
Okay.
you can go forward.
Alright.
Keeping in mind that I was not here, I was on vacation in October.
Lucky.
I know, right. It is my recollection that we asked the county what to do about this, and that they basically said they had several dispensaries in Grand Traverse that were operating, and kind of said that, why wouldn't we?
I didn't talk to the county directly, I talked to individual townships within the county, because each township kind of regulates it differently. Like Garfield won't let you have a dispensary as we define in a commercial building, but you can have it, I think, as a home occupation, which we already allow. So, yeah, some people weren't as concerned about it. I did talk to law enforcement, that was in the October review, and they weren't as concerned, because I think Dan had brought it up, like, are we scared of something that we don't really need to be scared of? Is it actually a problem? And that's what prompted that, the calls and the conversations with the different agencies.
County didn't see this until we sent it to them 2 months ago, which would have been October. At our October meeting,
That I wasn't.
we set the public hearing and sent it to county. I think at the same time, right, in October?
It seemed that we were in agreement at the time. That's what.
We, the county and,
Us and the county.
well, the county hadn't seen it yet, so we couldn't be in agreement.
I thought we had asked for their opinion on it. We had.
We asked for it.
That's what
But
we did
just
in
got-
October, we sent it to them for an opinion. The information that we had gotten in October was from Sean, doing research. And it wasn't like he convened the planning commission and said, hey, guys, what should we do with this? The county planning commission. He polled basically other municipalities and law enforcement.
Because the zoning's done at the township level too, now.
Right.
So that's why I called the townships and stuff rather than.
Okay.
Doug?
Just as a question that you have brought up, we tested a couple of cowboys and a question I wanted to ask you. Now, I rent out a building for a grow station. And it says on there that the only two people that have rights to going in there is the owner and the person that grows it, right?
It says,
It's,
except for the owner, no persons other than the cultivator, or however it says, shall be
The
allowed
cultivator.
to go in. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
if I, as the owner, I think he's got stored nuclear waste in there or whatever, I wanna go in there. Now, isn't that, in the law, can I go in, can he have me in there? Or with me going in there, does that break the law that way?
Well, so the act requires,
Who can go into these grow stations? I
well,
guess is what I'm asking. Do I gotta be a card holder or?
no, the act requires that the property be locked up,
Right.
locked, that the plants be locked. So, I mean, if you would come to me and said, I wanna lease my property, my facility for this, here's, I would start talking to you about what you should do and shouldn't do. One thing I would say is, you make them create a chain link or some kind of viewable through a locked gate to see what's going on in their operation, so that you can go into the building, walk through,
But still
see,
not have
and
access
observe.
to it.
Yeah, you can't go in there and reach and grab it, but you can see what's going on, observe, so you know.
Okay, I guess that's.
That would be,
what was-
yeah, yeah. The ordinance itself, your ordinance says except, the purpose of your ordinance is to say, he can't give tours,
Right.
you know? Sorry, Township Planning
can't have a
Commission, you don't
unit.
get to go observe the operation.
Darn.
Yeah.
Well, if you're
So there are
you
ways
should
to-
be able to go see your own property.
That's a good
Right.
idea.
I mean,
But what I'm
if you're
saying
an
is,
apartment owner, you have a right to go into the apartment and
That's-
make sure people
that's
are.
Right, and
right.
you
But
do-
what I'm saying is, if I step in there, because of, am I breaking the law for the guy that owns, or that is cultivating that marijuana plant? Because I went into this building, because when you go into a dispensary, don't you have to be a card holder to go into a dispensary?
Or the grower person.
But
No,
this is, I
Or the
realize-
caregiver. In a dispensary, it's the caregiver and the people who consume it, whatever. And then, but I think our ordinance allows that the property owner and the cultivator are both allowed, and are the only two people that can be in the facility.
I,
But it would be on the onus of the person who wants to grow the stuff if they're complying with the law or not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can't zone to help people know how to comply with their own laws. We don't tell somebody with a commercial kitchen how to pass a health inspection.
so I totally agree with that, but I guess what I'm saying is, me stepping in there, say, we wanna get this guy to stop, so you go check that out, boom. The authorities are there to bust him because I went in that building and I'm not allowed, he's not allowed to let anybody in there.
That's not,
That's not right.
Yeah, your ordinance does
you
not
see
allow
where I'm
requirements. But
getting
right,
at?
but so what I think, the answer, the way to operate.
That's why I'm
for-
wondering how the law reads for.
The law reads, enclosed locked facility, which is part of where growing must take place, means a closet, room, or other comparable stationary and fully enclosed area equipped with secured locks or other functioning security devices that permit access only by a registered primary caregiver or registered qualifying patient. But that, so when I said, if you were the owner, I would suggest that you make it so you get to go inside the building, but you do not get to go inside the area in which it's grown.
Inside
And
the
you have
contained
some
area.
kind of viewable area so you can see what's going on and make sure you're comfortable, but you're not, I mean, to the extent that someone decides as an owner of property to allow a grow facility and they foreclose themselves the ability to go in there by virtue of the Medical Marijuana Act, sorry, that's their problem.
I'm not gonna go renting out space for
Yeah.
it anyway.
It's kind of like the zoo, you'd have to make it like a viewing only area. Okay, any other discussion? This is intriguing. Anybody feeling moved? I bet you Marcy is.
everyone's like, why are they laughing? And it's, this is the only fun we have.
We're sending this to the board.
Well, the motion would be that we recommend approval to the board. If somebody was feeling,
Oh, I just want to update, the other thing I forgot, the county planning commission report referenced the act, or the bill that was approved by the House that's sent it to the Senate. It's in the Judiciary Committee right now. It is, who knows where it's going to go again. That happened once before, last year. It does not, the previous version from last year allowed the municipality to completely prohibit dispensaries if it chose. This one says the municipality can limit the number, which to me is not particularly clear. Does that mean I can limit it to 0, or I can limit it to something?
mathematicians
That's
would
not-
start arguing with you about if 0 is a number.
Okay, fair enough. See, that's why I don't do that. So I don't know the answer, but just so you know, it's relatively the same. I mean, it allows for the state board to approve all dispensaries through and with a township or municipal, which the municipality within which the dispensary is proposed. They call them provisioning centers, but it's the same thing. The township in which it's proposed would have the ability to review and recommend approval or denial, but and also create a licensing scheme. But just so you know, I just wanted to update you on that, since it's mentioned. Sorry.
I would make a motion to recommend to the board the amendment to the Acme Township zoning ordinance, amendment 36, medical 36, medical marijuana dispensaries and cultivation operations. Where are the numbers? 3.2, 6.11.3, 9.26, and 9.27.
We have a motion, do you have a second?
Support.
Support from Rosa, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of, or recommendation of approval for amendment 36 to the board, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. PUD, planned unit development. So, John or Sean, you both are kind of helping us with this. So I don't know if you guys want to do paper rec scissors really fast, or
I think I'll let John go. I gave a piece last time,
Okay.
and he has some good info to add to it.
Kind of give you a history, this ordinance had been reviewed and approved and actually adopted by the township board probably back in 2002, maybe, 3. And then it was part of an overall package of land development guidelines, including cluster housing and open space, and it was rejected by a referendum vote. I don't think the referendum vote, at least my opinion, was that it had less to do with the ordinance than it did to do with local politics at the time. But the ordinance that you had a copy of last month is virtually the same one that had been approved by the planning commission and actually adopted by the township board of trustees. The purpose of a planned development ordinance is to allow a little bit greater flexibility with the use of property in terms of allowing people to do some innovative development. I think Sean provided you a pretty good, he gave you a staff report with a variety of different examples. Some of them, most of them are local that you can find in this area. The other part of the process is that he also included in your informational packet some pages from the book called Rural by Design, which shows how planned developments can be used very effectively in agricultural communities to protect agricultural properties, but still allow for some development on the properties. The township does have in place what they call an open space development, which was the provision that was used to develop the Flint Fields, okay? But the Flint Fields project in a community that had a planned development would have been considered a planned development, because it was a different type of a use for an agricultural district. Agricultural related to some aspect, but also commercially related because of the amount of parking and some of the other development that occurred on the site. If anybody is familiar with the old Norris Elementary School, which is at the corner of Cherry Hill and M22 in Elmwood, Elmwood adopted the planned development ordinance primarily paralleled off of the Acme ordinance, because I drafted it for them. And it was because of that ordinance they adopted that they were able then the developers were able to convert the old Norris Elementary into that mixed-use development, which is primarily arts related. Under their old ordinance, they would have never been able to do that, but under the planned development ordinance, they were allowed to do that. So it just provides some properties with some added innovation. The only properties really that are, if you're the map, everything on this map that's in this light green color would be areas under the current ordinance that would be allowed for a planned development. So one of the things that we did here, which was unique, is, and it's a policy decision from the planning commission, is to allow planned developments to occur in agricultural districts. Some communities allow them in the ag districts, some do not. If you were to eliminate them from A1, you would know that a big part of the township, especially in the north part of the township, where the properties are all zoned ag, would come on the zoning map, all the white areas that are on that map would not be qualified for PD. So if you said that PD would not be allowed in an A1 zone, then all these areas in white would be exempt from using the PD ordinance. So that's the policy decision. Some communities allow them in the ag, some do not. I think I included it in the ag primarily because of situations that you have, like with MI hops, for example, is a good example. Flint Fields is an example. In some of the farming community, I guess I'd kind of rely on Doug on this one, but in other parts along, other communities along the 31 corridor down to Manistee, some of the farming communities I've talked to, some of the parcels where they do some similar things like growing berries or apples or whatever, in terms of the fruit business, some portions of their property are not usable for fruit production, but then the farming community is looking for options of how they can use that property in a more innovative way. Sometimes a PB could be an innovative way to use some of the property. So it's really a policy decision. It's a flexible land development tool. It's used quite a bit. I'm thinking that there's only probably a few townships in the county here that don't have PD in their ordinances, because it's used quite a bit around here. It's been used for a number of years over in Mission Peninsula. So anybody have any questions? There was a question, Sean asked me that you guys had a question about the density transfer portion.
No.
That actually comes out of your current ordinance. Your existing ordinance under your open space conservation subdivisions, that's the density transfer provision that you currently have in your zoning code. That's where you're able to buy density from another property owner under a special use permit.
Well, then it basically puts a deed restriction on
They
the
put a deed-
property
they
that's
put a-
been, yeah.
Yes, they put a deed restriction on the other property.
And the average between the sending and receiving can't exceed what's allowable in the district, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, the average between the sending and receiving cannot exceed what's allowable. So if you only have 2 on the one parcel and you have 8 on the
Yes, if
other,
you have,
and 4 is allowable, the sending parcel could only send 2, they can't send 4.
Yes.
Because okay.
Now, where that comes into play, the sending and receiving are really part of like a farmland preservation program, a technique. Somebody wants to, instead of selling off like 5 acres of their farm, they can they can negotiate the sale of that density to a property owner that's in an area that may have sewer and water that can increase the density. So they're selling that development right to somebody else without having to segment or divide their property. So it's a farmland preservation technique.
Somebody who represents the ag community brought up the scenario of selling their land development rights to the PDR program and then turning around and sending their development rights or their divisions. And I noted that they would both be deed restrictions and it probably would not be allowed. But just to confirm,
That's referred to as double dipping.
yeah. You can't double dip.
Why not?
No. But that's,
Okay.
you know, that's the concept of planned development. It's basically to allow for innovative development.
Does anybody have questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
It talks about, if within 1 year following the PD contract by the board, the final plats or site plans for an area embraced with the PD must be filed as provided, and if not, and nothing's filed within 1 year, then it can be terminated by the township. But the one above that talks about, once it is approved, it cannot be terminated except for by the township board and all parties interested in the land. What would happen if they started development, but let's say the economy changed, something happened, and then they stopped at a certain point and they didn't develop for a certain number of years? Would they have to come back and have another PD approved? I mean, like, how long does that carry?
As long as they're starting the PD.
Then it
Let's take an example. Let's assume the village of Grand Traverse, in a way, it's a mixed development, it's like a PD.
Right,
So let's say they had 180 acres, they started with 22 acres with Meyer.
right.
And then the economy tanked, and
So
then
they
they went flat. They would be, in my opinion, they would not lose their vested development right for the PD because they did start construction and installed the utilities.
Okay.
Okay.
That kind of happened like with the storage unit. That was an SUP to build those two. The person built half. The time expired, so we had to do a minor amendment because Jeff said they still had their vested interest to fulfill what was provided in the SUP.
Do you concur, Jeff?
Yes, once they've started work, then they've got a vested right to continue.
Okay.
I mean, you have that, it's consistent with all of your other approvals, SUP approvals and everything else. If nothing happens within a certain amount of time, it expires. Under some of the other sections, there are opportunities to extend for a year by approval of the board, I think. I'm speaking without looking at it right now, but something like that. I don't know if that's in here or not. I haven't read every word of this, but yeah, that's consistent with the law and the way approvals generally work.
Question?
Yeah.
If a person had a piece of land that would allow them to build one unit on an acre, and they wanted to do something like this with 2 units per acre,
You cannot use the PD to circumvent the intent of the ordinance.
no, I mean, let's say if they want to do a PD, and they wanted to do, and they came to us and they wanted to do 2 units per acre, and they had all this, mixed use and all that, everything looked good, but what if there was nobody that wanted to sell them the transfer, the development rights to put the 2 units on there? Is that,
They wouldn't be able to do it.
that's the end of the story?
Pretty much.
Doesn't that kind of kill the idea of increasing density and reducing land use?
But you could also cluster.
You can also
There's
cluster.
kind of, that's an alternative to get higher density, but you can also, if you have a 40-acre parcel and you want to do, I don't know, make up numbers.
Well, if you had a 40-acre parcel and the ordinance required, and you do have, your R1 district says 1 unit per acre,
Okay.
you could put 40 units, and instead of putting 40 units on 41-acre lots, you could put 40 units on 5 acres and kind of have like what the kind of development that you just saw tonight with, clustering them and having a greater concentration and then preserving the balance. So you can do that within the PD without having to bring in extra density, okay? But if a developer wanted to bring in extra density to make it work, then he could go out and find somebody that was willing to sell their development rights to bring it in, okay?
Is there an economic incentive for them to do that?
It depends on the type of development. If it's a high-end, not high-end, but if it's a mixed-use development where they really want to increase the amount of units per acre in order to make the economics work, or the type of development work, yeah, it may be. They may want to do that. You know, but it's really an option. It's not a requirement. It's in the current ordinance, it's just an option that's available if somebody wants to do it. You're not requiring them to do it, it's just an option.
Some people still might wanna build stuff on 5-acre parcels where
Yeah.
you have a house plopped in the middle, so.
Right.
We're gonna keep it up with the board, and when we're done, just take notes and I'll get to questions. Anybody else have any questions? For interest, Steve?
I think it's a great option to have.
Trey?
I agree.
Marcy?
Good option.
I agree. I have a few questions.
Sure.
So would we then need the open space development part of our ordinance, or would this like
That,
kind of,
I think when we start doing the
Phase that out.
revisions, that'll go away.
okay,
What would we do in the case of Flint Fields who's done under that? Would we have to like rewrite it under PUD? Would it just exist as it is?
They would exist as is.
Okay.
one note on the map, you mentioned, I didn't think about this until you mentioned the example in Elmwood with the school, which is cool for that to not be sitting there vacant, and those who follow TCAPs, it's possible that Bertha Voss might be going away again. So, my question is, it's not included in our allowable districts,
Right.
but that's a possible property where if it sits there, I mean, when I moved to town, that place was like a wreck. So I don't know what everybody thinks about ag being included, but I don't. Blue, single-family neighborhood?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's a funny district, because you basically have Deepwater Point natural area, some properties on the water,
What I,
Bertha Voss and Christ the King.
my suggestion for something like that that's buried into a neighborhood would be that when when the ordinance is revised, let's make sure that there's a conditional rezoning provision in there.
Okay,
That would be more applicable for conditional rezoning than it would for planning and development.
I just think that that whole district is kind of silly.
The whole-
Like, look at the blue district on there, it's kind of silly.
The single-family
Yeah.
neighborhood. We'll have to evaluate when we do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of parcels, and it's a weird bag of parcels. Because you have Christ the King, that farmhouse by Tom's, Bertha Voss, the Deepwater Point natural area, some residential, and then that stuff up on the hill off of,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Tom's isn't
You know, like-
listed in there.
Tom's is actually the purple.
is that the rectory for the Christ the King? Well, I didn't know that until just now.
Tom's is purple.
That White House in between the church and Tom's? Oh. I just thought it was a nice little farmhouse that just happened to be there.
That was the birth of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, I did know that, I heard that at one point, anyway. I didn't know that was the church rectory.
My question to the planning commission is, what do you think about the ag? Keep it in, take it out?
That was not my questions. Well, that's a large chunk of our available properties where this would seem to make sense.
Doug, what do you think?
I think you'd keep it in, but I think a lot of it's gonna be a new point because of the fact that with doing the PDRs, a lot of
That's all restricted anyway, would be restricted.
it's gonna be restricted and
I agree.
that's, but I know there's some that are out there that haven't signed into it. And, they might use that option. I mean, we've got pieces of property ourselves that we don't grow nothing on it. And scratch our head as to what we're gonna do with it.
Well, and there's the ag properties like along 72, you know, where, kind of by my local hops across from the casino there by Crisp Road, you have those. And then the ones in between,
Where the pine trees are up there? along 72,
On the south side, just past
just past
or not Arnold.
Arnold Road, yeah.
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 I mean, those kind of parcels are pretty big parcels that,
The one thing I want to point out to the planning commission is that when you evaluate a site for planned development,
Mhm.
it has to be consistent with the township master plan.
Mhm.
So I don't want anyone thinking that planned development is a backdoor technique to getting property turned into commercial property, because it's not. It has to conform with the township. They have to go through a due diligence, and you have to show that it's consistent with the township master plan.
okay.
So,
To show you an example of
yeah, go ahead.
this parcel right here, we have this conservation and future urban residential. Someone owns this and wants to develop it. This would, he called a week and a half ago. This would allow him to shift within that parcel, those units to there, and still meet the future land use plan by taking the units off what we already described as recreation conservation. So again, that's another example of how the PUD works with the future land use plan.
Like shifting things around within a parcel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same number of units that are allowed on that parcel based on the density, we're just kind of clustering them where we've said we want it and preserving what we said we want to preserve.
Which is the creek, right?
Yeah.
Which is
It's Yuba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
More flexibility than.
exactly, another tool, another set of options.
Do you have other comments? I have none. The Sheffer Farms, in Zimmerman in North Long Lake, was an example in here. And my thoughts on like this is probably not what we're going for in our township, because
Very intense.
if you look at it, yeah, the intensity, the density, and the other thing that I just would make a comment on, so to me, this is probably not what we're going for, is point A.
Right.
Point B is, if you look at where all the common area is, it's just this little tiny dinky, stupid buffer around the whole outside of the thing. To me, when you look at fragmentation and like landscape and like this is the stuff I did in grad school, you don't want little strips of conservation in weird, you want to keep a big, nice chunk of stuff together. So, and then I think about like the Land Division Act and how there's width to depth ratios that have to be maintained for a lot. Is there any way that we could kind of approach that with
Yeah.
the common areas so
This
that it
is-
doesn't end up
This is,
being this junk?
this is what you want, if you look at your handout with this graphic here, and it's not paginated, so.
Yeah,
It says
sorry.
figure 17.9.
Towards the back.
Yeah.
Towards the back. This is out of Rural by Design. This shows an example of a traditional subdivision based on the current ordinance. And using these type of planned development, you can get the same number of units, but by preserving, I think what you're talking about is usable conservation and open space areas.
Right, not just make the units, the lots a little bit
Yeah.
smaller and
It's
then
actu- it's
put like a
actually doing-
little,
It's doing a master plan for the site.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone came in with something like Sheffer Farms,
You move towards this.
you can say, well, that doesn't meet these criteria in F.
The nice thing about planned development is, personally, professionally, I would rather see planned development throughout the entire, any township rather than commercial zoning.
Okay.
The reason is, planned development is a negotiated process between the planning commission and the developer.
But Jeff hates it when we have
And
latitude.
it takes into consideration the township master plan.
As long as there are standards, I don't care. Don't leave out standards.
Yeah, that's the only thing is like, it would be nice to kind of allude to the fact that we're saving like usable or valuable tracts of land and not just letting people do these little strips of common area that are useless.
Well, I think.
Those
you
are
know,
a joke,
uh,
just
And I think the process that's used,
yeah.
I mean, a good example was tonight. I mean, Sean and I met with Todd Goki and with Scott, the 3 months, August.
Yeah.
And we went over the form-based code with them. We went over things like innovative stormwater, about protection of the creek, and addressed a lot of community goals and objectives with them right up front. And when they came in with their plan, they had all that, a lot of that stuff already incorporated. I think the same thing is with plan development, is when they come in, Sean sits down with them and goes through the master plan, goes through the placemaking plan, goes through the ordinance, and then basically starts to kind of put the framework, what the development would start looking like in terms of where the planning commissions, where they're going relative to what's on the books.
I spoke with a developer when I was doing this research, and she likes these because they really force them to do their homework early. You have to present the best possible plan to the planning commission up front. And the trade-off for the developer then is it makes the approval process going into the future easier on them instead of constant variances and amendments and stuff like that. They gotta think of it all at once, how do all these pieces connect? And then the public and the planning commission, myself, we get to work with them through that process and have more input than here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece through time, so.
The way the way that you can script it out is think of this as mainly like a plug-and-play device. Once you get the system set up, the master plan set up and it's approved, then as they come in over phases, they could develop the site over a period of 5 or 10 years. They're basically following the plan, they're just plugging and playing right in place what they've all agreed to as part of the plan. Because the way this is set up is this document in the master plan, once it's approved by the board, planning commission, it gets recorded at the register of deeds office. It's part of the land record. But for the title, it's part of that property. So this is way different, a little bit different than a site plan, because it's now a matter of public record and it's part of the land record. So and over a period of years, it makes it a lot more expeditious for them because the plan's already been approved. They just, as the market allows them, they just put in the pieces to make the development work. So that's on a large scale. On a small scale, you could have a planned development that is one project and maybe takes one construction season.
A few other random questions. The stormwater, like you said, this is pretty much what we had approved, 13 years ago or whatever. So, do we need to look at incorporating anything that we did say in the form-based code talking about innovative stormwater, kind of the more like current thinking on that, so that because we've been stuck before where we didn't have the teeth to be able to enforce that. So do we need to kind of look to make sure those elements are in here?
Isn't that in there on say, it has to meet 5 of the following objectives? So like you've got the placemaking plans mentioned, business district zonings mentioned, goals and objectives of the township master plan, provide transition buffers.
I guess I was looking at the, page 5, talking about like the schematics and the grading plans.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Storm and sanitary sewer plan. Oh. So I guess I don't know where it goes, but
Carly, you're talking about a site development standard that would go under what we were just talking about.
in the
And number
page
5, number 3.
Yeah.
You could stick it in there.
That would be.
What's it called? This is mainly what Carly's referring to on page 5. This is like the site development standards.
Okay.
So she was saying incorporate things like innovative stormwater, dark sky lighting, things along those lines.
Yeah, the development standards that we are always constantly kind of harping on, the native landscaping, Jim's here, hey buddy. That kind of stuff to make sure we're not later like, oh, but could you please do this? Because that never works. And then my last question, I think, is about this is relating to the idea of the moorings. I think that's what it's called, right, John, in Elmwood?
It's called the nightmare.
The nightmare, yeah, okay. So is that a PUD? How are they developing that? Isn't that?
That's not a PUD. In Traverse City it may be a PUD, but in Elmwood it's a regular
like site condo development?
Site condo development.
Because I know that there was a lot of concern from people when they just cleared the whole thing, and then they were like, oh, but it was all bad trees, we didn't want it anyway. Yeah. But habitat is still habitat. So I guess my other question with this is, you know, we have on here that the extent of the grading and areas that would be disturbed are gonna be outlined. Do we need to say that, like, we're trying to preserve, I don't know if I wanna use the word virgin, because technically, like, none of our land is virgin, cause they just cut everything down 100 years ago,
Right.
but,
Larger.
yeah, like, if there's old growth trees or there's mature habitat, like, don't we want them to not just clear that all and start from scratch and then let autumn olive grow back?
Yeah,
That's so beautiful.
we can,
It's so shiny!
we can, I can take a look at that.
That's the only other, those are the things that I thought about in here, is trying to make sure we're updated with the things we've been, talking a lot about. That's all I have. Sorry. Anybody else? So what we would do now is basically be, looking to set a public hearing for the
January?
January meeting, if anybody felt like doing that, or we could table it, just so we get to keep talking about it.
Let's set a public hearing for January.
Are you feeling moved?
I'm feeling moved.
We have a motion by White to set a public hearing for January for the planned unit development ordinance, I
We're
know.
taking the U out of it, or just PD?
Are we PD or PUD?
I took the U out of it because we don't have a minimum acreage requirement to do it. So it's just a plain development. You can have it on 1 acre, you can have it on 100. Some ordinances that are PUD, they have a minimum that you can't even
It
use.
has to be like a 10-acre parcel before you can, okay.
Yeah, I'll support that.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a support, discussion from the board. And no discussion? What are your questions that you have at this point?
They probably, you could go ahead and pass this and do what you want. but,
Okay. Let's do
I would
that.
probably want to just talk to John a little bit.
That's fine.
But, I mean, you're free to ask it in the public forum, but, okay, all in favor of setting a public hearing for our January 2016 meeting, for the PD ordinance, say aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Is there anything you're just dying to know right now?
You know what, as we go to the public hearing, if something changes, I guess what I'd be dying to know is does that not include ag land? We do not have ag land. We have a significant piece of property that we do not want to develop,
What's it zoned?
R1.
It's, R1's allowed.
Yep,
Okay.
it's included in this.
I had just an environmental question
Yeah.
that I wondered about. When it comes to land swaps, let's say that acreage they want to do some clustering on has a swamp area that they want to build near that swamp area, or they want to fill that swamp area in. So does that mean that they can take some other swamp area, or somebody else has a swamp area they could utilize?
The sending parcel cannot be more than 10% wetland. So like if I have, say I have a piece of nothing but swamp, right, that I bought from a guy when I still lived in Florida and I didn't know what I was
You didn't know
buying.
what you were buying.
And I had all these divisions, but I can't do anything because the whole site's undevelopable. I can't give my divisions to somebody else and let them take them so that there's more density within the township, because my land's not buildable. So, does that answer your question?
Well, I'm just wondering if that swampland is going to be automatically protected
Well, you can't, I
from
mean, you can't
doing,
just fill in.
fill in a
You can't just
swamp.
fill in a
Yeah, so
wetland.
like-
That was my
Regardless
question.
of the PD or
Yeah.
not the
Okay.
PD, if
The
it's a
buffers will still
delineated
remain.
wetland.
The
and
buff,
stuff.
everything remains.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're saying is that you're not transferring your building rights, and that was the goal of this, I believe.
That's what I thought.
If the sending parcel, so the parcel that would be giving up its divisions, if it's nothing but wetland, so like,
They have nothing to send.
Yeah,
you have nothing to
really,
So
yeah.
if you're sitting there with a piece of land that you
I get it,
can't,
I want to dump
this
it.
doesn't like give you a chance, yeah, sell it to some guy in Florida.
I get it.
Get them back for all those, anyway, yeah, you can't just give your divisions to somebody else because there's no way you could do them on your own. Is that,
That's what it is.
yo,
The book where some of those examples came from, Rule by Design, the township did buy a copy, so if any of you want to look through it more next month, feel free to ask them all.
or Sean will liberally plagiarize it for you.
I
I'm just
signed it.
kidding, I'm kidding. I'm
I'm
joking.
trying to help you out.
Sean was really concerned that he was gonna get in trouble for plagiarism with our little packet.
I even tried calling them, but
Okay,
it worked till now.
all right, So, we've set a public hearing for next month. This is interesting also. Tent sale ordinance. Hang in there, guys. It's almost 9 o'clock.
All right, so tent sales, we talked about them kind of briefly a couple months ago, but the question keeps coming up. Right now, tents aren't regulated. I'm trying to find out definitively what action to take, if any, moving forward. Right now, there's not a lot of consistency. I know, for instance, Flint Fields comes in for a land use permit to set up their tent for the Acme Fall Festival. Woodland Creek doesn't for their annual tent sale that they have in the parking lot. Should there be some sort of standard that we apply to everyone? Right now, someone's been requesting every few weeks information on setting up a tent at the Meyer parking lot for a month this summer. So I guess my first question is this a zoning ordinance or is this like a police power ordinance?
First, I think you need to look at each specific approval for a property that's asking for it. That is, are there outdoor sales allowed? Is there outdoor storage? All those things would come into play. If the land already has some restriction on an outdoor sale type facility, regardless of what you do otherwise, would not supersede that limitation or restriction, presumably.
If it's in their special use permit that
Yeah.
no outdoor sales storage, then no
Yeah,
tent sale.
then yeah, that wouldn't be allowed. To the extent you're talking about a temporary use in a parking lot, I mean, I don't think you really want to do that as a zoning ordinance. It's short term, it's limited administrative review, it's more like the special events type ordinance than a zoning ordinance. So probably, to the extent that you want to do it, you should probably request that the township board consider that and start working on a police power ordinance, because it would not be a zoning ordinance, so it would be outside of the scope of the planning commission's powers.
Yeah, the other part that I would, when you're researching it, is that talk construction code, county construction code, because some of the counties now are requiring the actual building permit for the tent, depending on the size of it, because of the implication it has for health, welfare, and safety. So that can be a trigger too, so you want to include that.
Also,
Well, it also impedes like fire safety,
Parking,
traffic,
oh yeah,
sight lines.
right, parking, if you've got a minimum parking and the tent takes up a sixth of the lot, then or then you, without the parking that's required under the ordinance. But administratively, that can be reviewed, and the special events ordinance does require Metro and the police review and others, so.
All right, so the easy solution there is approach township board about a police power
Well,
ordinance.
Yeah,
or in the past, like we've worked on ordinance language and kind of given it to the board because they don't really, right? Didn't we pretty much write the special events ordinance and then hand it to them and say, we think you should think about this?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
Doug, do you remember?
especially,
The special events,
Seems like
we
we
worked
did.
on that and then we just kind of sent language over and we're like, hey, board, why don't you talk about this? Almost like an unofficial recommend to the
What
board
do you think
approval of.
about this here, yeah?
well, it's
Yeah.
kind of like you guys were, for a while, they were reviewing the stormwater control ordinance, even though that's police power. It's outside of the zoning.
Yeah.
You were reviewing that, so,
That's still a mess.
yeah.
Most certainly can, and request that they consider approval of it. I would at least recommend that maybe you go to the board meeting and say, would you entertain this as an idea?
Okay.
Because you wouldn't want to spend a whole bunch of time on it. There's no statutory requirement or anything for them to do anything with it.
Yeah.
They could refuse to put it on their agenda. So you should probably approach them. I mean, maybe
Well, Sean has,
maybe your board representative could do it.
or Sean has to go to the next meeting
Yeah.
because we are recommending approval of
I'll be there.
ordinance. I
So-
could go too, just for fun.
Or put it on your report to the board and include it in your discussion or part of the
Okay, yeah,
discussion.
I'll do that. In line
So you
with-
don't spend a lot of time on it and then they say,
Yeah.
we don't like that.
What
We've
about,
done that with
and
other
if I'm gonna
things.
go and ask them, I'll ask them this too, would food trucks, because this keeps coming up recently, would that be a police power?
Well, food trucks, it depends on what it
What
is.
else can we talk about today that's been hugely controversial? We talked about planned unit development. I don't know, but
Let's put food trucks on January.
nobody's gonna be setting up a food truck in January.
That's right.
Unless it
asking
stays
about now.
60 degrees in December.
So maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know on that. We looked at the food truck thing prior to your arrival with us here, and we basically, it was happening in landowners' parking lots. And if I remember correctly, we said we can't really tell people what they can do in their parking lot. This was when it was going on in the city, and it was a huge issue in the city because they were parking essentially in parking spots on the road and causing some trouble.
You can
So,
regulate it.
what?
You can regulate it.
Sure. Through a police power, right?
Police or zoning, depending on how you want to set it up.
What would you recommend?
What would I recommend? I would recommend going police power, that way they have to come in and pull a license and they have to pay a permit fee. And then the police power ordinance would be specific enough to say where they could or could not go. And then it would also include things like if the food truck, let's say we have a food truck that comes into an existing commercial building, and it's so popular that people are coming to the food truck to get their food and they're taking all the parking up that's really prescribed for the businesses. So you gotta have some type of trigger in there that the zoning administrator could say, wait, time out, we gotta evaluate this. But I don't know if I'd wanna get into the zoning, because that means these all have to come to some degree before the PC.
Police powers administrative.
Police powers administrative, and they just go to they go right to the zoning administrator, he works through the licensing with them.
You're getting a lot of food truck requests with like Bravo Zulu or with other places around here?
Recently someone called about the fireworks, having one set up there this summer across from the park, so. Bravo Zulu is more interested in building a kitchen now, so.
Whoa, everyone just got really excited.
Yeah.
What are we excited about? Oh, yeah. We'll hear more on that. So maybe we should just talk to the board at the next board meeting about those two items then. And just see if they're interested, explain the situation. Okay. Yes, Brian?
Quickie on tents, I was once at an event that had a lot of tents, and a windstorm came through and blew some of the tents, and at this event, some of the tents were held down with very large, very heavy nitrogen cylinders, compressed nitrogen air, and some of those cylinders just went flying with the tents as they will, and somebody who happened to be there was hit in the head with one of the nitrogen
That's why the
cylinders.
county,
Yeah.
that's why some county construction code departments are starting to regulate tents now.
Yeah, and that August storm we had was an extreme event, obviously, but I understand the woodland tent went flying in that, and
It did.
so, there's sort of a safety concern there.
A lot
I think
of
the
stuff
small
went
tents can be allowed to just let fly, but when you start attaching weights to them, to hold them down, you're sort of fighting nature, and that stuff can be really dangerous.
You're basically making a giant parachute with flying objects on it. Yeah. Well, and that, yeah. So I think we understand all the issues with that, so let's, if we're all in agreement, I don't think we did a motion on that, but we'll go to the board and kind of see what they think about it. All right. Oh, boy. I'm gonna open it for public comment at 9:05. What? Oh, wait, what?
No, never mind, I saw the public comment was before it.
We still got our little updates at the end. Public comment, open at 9:05. I feel so bad as it past your bedtime. It's like, you didn't plan on this. All right, it's open 9:05. Hearing nothing, I'm gonna close it at 9:05 and a half. I'm just kidding, 9:06. Just round it up. We waited a whole minute. Did you see that? All right, other PC business. Sean,
In the last month, since our November 9th meeting, our number of land use permits, as probably predicted, has really dropped. We had 2 this last month, 1 for a new home, 1 for an addition. 2 sign permits, potentially Bravo Zulu minor amendment to add a kitchen next month, but the holiday is going to make it hard to get that review done. Starting Monday, January 4th, the Township Hall will be switching to a 4-day schedule, Monday through Thursday from 7:30 to 6, on a 6-month trial basis. So the idea is to kind of accommodate people after work, if they're working till 5 and stuff like that.
Okay. Marcy, did you have something you were going to share here?
Yeah, I'm just giving updates now on the Park and Trail Committee. At the December board meeting, the Park Shoreline Phasing In Committee, that really didn't have a name, but combined with the Trail Committee that was in charge of doing trails with TART that are connecting the 3 points from 5 Mile Land of TART all the way throughout the township. So those 2 were combined. We also had $6,000 that was approved by the board to hire Gosling and Zubek to complete the engineering requirements that we're going to need to support any grants that we apply for. There was $4,000, or up to $4,000 is approved to write a grant, along with another $25,000 was pulled with that from the septic fund for having extra money to put towards park developments within 2016. If anybody's interested, there's going to be a meeting at 10 a.m. on Friday here at the township.
That'll be held just like an open meeting.
Yes. That's all.
Tomorrow Wednesday I'll be attending the Acme to Charlevoix trail meeting that I've been going to those. And this is the one where they unveil the plan. It's nice, I read through it, made some comments on it, and it'll be a very cool document to be able to bring to the township to start kind of working on support and figuring out how the TART Trail can go north and prosper. Yeah, it's really cool. The plan is very nicely done and very comprehensive, I think. So I'll bring back a copy of that for you guys if you want to see it.
Where's that at?
The meeting's up at the Torch Lake Township Hall at 1.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock on
1 till
Wednesday.
3.
Jim and I will probably carpool if
Room for
anybody's interested in going. So,
Any
what?
update?
That's a township hall.
It's a very nice township hall. If you guys would all like to
This
see
is
what
very
we
nice.
aspire to, go up to Torch Lake. Did you, Jim?
Anything from Julie or Gosling Zupek on closing the Acme gap from our meeting, from our walking tour?
Yeah, so the board, the township board at the last board meeting approved money. I'm not sure how much, I have to talk with Amy Genema, to get some stuff done for the parks and everything.
That's what I just talked about. It was
Okay.
6,000.
Okay, but there's other money too, there's a new line item.
There's another outline.
Anyway.
It was 29,000 was pulled from the septic,
Okay.
and that was split for 2 different things.
Anyway, but I have a proposal that Julie received from,
Gosling Zupek?
yeah, what's his name?
Klaus.
That they're committed to paying a portion of it. The Conservancy, I think, is gonna be committed to paying a portion of it. We're looking at if Acme has the money to pay for a portion of it, to get the engineering work done for all those routes that we walked. We parked at Bunker Hill and walked back behind the Holiday Inn, through the Holiday Inn and the Sleep Inn, down to Bayside Park, all the way up to the shores, up the side of the road to the Meyer property, and then back over Mount Hope through like the back of the old Down Outlet that's now the Saddlery, and up by the Hope Village, thanks, I was like, what's that thing? And then up around Mount Hope. So there's possibilities of the trail network kind of building on those routes. And we're working on getting Gosling Zubek, I think it was $17,000, I forget, to do preliminary engineering to kind of chart out where the trail would go through all those places. But yeah, it's very exciting that we might have a trail that goes north of Bunker Hill someday before I die. So, and I'm only 30, so
We got some time.
we might have time. All right, is there anything else that anybody's been doing that they want to share? Because if not, I think we're done.
Please fill out your sheets and make sure I get those before you leave tonight.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? You can't talk.